Breaking news now. How Putin's cultural war has destroyed Russia's theater community. Putin's regime in Russia has instituted a number of cultural policies over the past decade with the goal of creating a new, more moral Russian citizenry. The imposition of an authoritarian cultural policy in the name of ideology is very familiar to those who are old enough to remember the Soviet Union, like Putin himself. A central tenet of the aims of the then-ruling Communist Party, socialist realism, had a different name back then. For the promotion of these aims, Putin, a former KGB lieutenant colonel, has substituted an ultra-patriotic Russian nationalism, heavily influenced by the social conservatism of the Orthodox Church. The use of obscenity in books, plays, and movies is now prohibited due to new laws and guidelines. They've banned depictions of historical events that don't align with official narratives of the past and censored blasphemy. They've also banned the promotion of non-traditional code for LGBTQ+ family values to anyone under the age of 18. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, Russian theater has been one of the most vocal artistic expressions in the country. Since state theaters in Russia continue to receive substantial funding, much like they did during the Soviet era, they must be careful about the themes and language they explore. However, since the 1990s, independent theater has thrived not only in Moscow and St. Petersburg's black box studios, but also in many smaller cities across Russia. As the most progressive cultural trend of the era, new drama has amplified the perspectives of previously silenced groups. It frequently uses verbatim material to give formerly incarcerated people, disillusioned youth, addicts and alcoholics, homosexuals, and abused women a platform to share their stories. After decades of Soviet propaganda, the documentary style of much new drama emphasizes the desire for the unfiltered truth. Over the past decade, as the Putin regime has become increasingly repressive, politically engaging works of independent theater have been staged, challenging the state's role in election theft, silencing opposition, endorsing police brutality, and tolerating corruption. As a result, it should come as no surprise that the Russian authorities' new, wartime cultural clampdown has been felt most acutely and visibly in the world of theater. An obliterated artistic milieu. In 2017, for example, there was already evidence of a shift toward ruthless intolerance of independent theater artists. Kirill Serebrennikov, a well-known director of both stage and screen, was falsely accused of stealing from the government. Serebrennikov's criticism of Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and his support for LGBTQ+ causes were almost certainly related to the accusation. Serebrennikov was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest in 2020 after being found guilty. After paying a hefty fine and having his sentence commuted in 2022, he fled Russia for the West. Russia's independent theater scene has been completely wiped out since the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Famous playwrights, directors, and actors have been fired for their outspoken anti-war sentiment, and many have fled the country as a result. Everyone from the young and the innovative to the remnants of the post-Soviet liberal intelligentsia of the previous generation falls into this category. Boris Akunin, also one of Russia's most popular novelists, Mikhail Dernenkov, and Ivan Vyerpayev are just some of the playwrights whose works have been removed from the repertoire of theaters or banned for performance in Russia by the Ministry of Culture. After the invasion began in Russia, playwright, director, and brilliant theatrical pedagogue Dernenkov fled to Finland. The authorities' swift ruthlessness in his case is on full display. He hoped Russia would lose the war on Facebook on April 19, 2022, because the country needed to wake up from the horrible nightmare it had fallen into. Within a week, all of Russia's theaters had been ordered to stop staging his plays. The Union of Theatre Makers, which is affiliated with the state, then proposed that he be kicked out. Deputies in the Russian state called for him to be charged with a criminal offense, and he was fired from his position as studio manager at the Moscow Art Theatre. Production of drama by the state. Several major state theaters, including the Moscow Art Theatre, have switched to a more patriotic repertoire under new management. To boost morale in the occupied areas of eastern Ukraine, agate brigades have been formed to tour the region. This term originates from the Soviet Union and refers to theater groups sent to the front to disseminate Bolshevik propaganda. That is to say, in accordance with its new patriotic cultural policy, the state has fully instrumentalized the theater. Imagine the extent of the damage in England to fully grasp its magnitude. New government-approved management was implemented for a number of experimental theatres in and around London, including the Royal Court, Southwark Playhouse, and Arcola. Opera House and National Theatre eliminated socially divisive works from their repertoires. Theatres in London's West End are compelled to produce plays that support government policies. Ian McKellen and Judi Dench, among others, have been blacklisted from future roles or have been forced to leave the country. Writers like David Hare, Lucy Preble, Tom Stoppard, and Jez Butterworth unable to express themselves on stage. Several directors were let go, including Katie Mitchell, Declan Donnellan, and Simon McBurney. This is how much damage the Putin regime in Russia has caused in a relatively short period of time. Siberian theater and opera director Timofey Kolyabin fled to Germany shortly after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. While Putin claims the West is trying to cancel Russian culture, Kolyabin draws a different, more cynical conclusion. There is currently one country which certainly is engaged in canceling Russian culture. The Russian Federation is that country.